Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
In a creaky old tavern, in a forgotten corner of the video game universe, a storm is raging. The barkeep gets a patchy phone call. It's hard to tell what the caller is saying, but there is much. But this much is clear: someone at the Six Pint Inn is planning a murder. There are 6 patrons. All of them are video game protagonists trying to escape their past. But the 6 Pint Inn has a way of bringing back old memories. Each flashback plays out in an entirely different genre, sometimes blending multiple. By exploring these memories, you may discover the identity of the murderer, or you may learn much darker secrets. In the Hex, you will control the 6 patrons and explore the 6 Pint Inn, delve into the memories of these cast-aside game protagonists to learn the truth of their past, learn the identity of the would-be murderer, as well as the victim. The Hex takes roughly 6 hours to complete on a first playthrough. And that's what's been chucked up on the Steam store page, so that's the Hex. Talk to me.
I was just trying to fucking think of the name of... What's the name of the fucking loony from GTA 5?
Trevor.
Trevor. It was Trevor that did it. I'll tell you that now. He got the blame for it in that game, and he's going to get the blame for it in this one as well.
Big Trev.
Yeah, Big Trev. Now, I had to watch the trailer for this twice.
Another Mullins game, innit? Danny Mullins at it again.
To try and get me head around what Mullins is up to, because is he trying to be a clever bastard again?
Yep.
Almost certainly. So I think the first thing that I sort of thought was it's a bit like a Cluedo. It's a bit like find out if it was so-and-so with the fucking bolt cutters in the dining room sort of thing. But I don't think it is that, because it says you're kind of watching their memories. So
Yeah.
I don't understand how one of them... I don't understand if one of them is a murderer or is going to be a murderer. Or
Yes.
whether... I don't understand how the memories play into that. So I'm confused. So you tell me.
Yes. So the Cluedo element is there, but you don't do much Cluedoing. So in Cluedo, I mean, I don't think I've played it for about 20 years, or longer than that, in fact, way longer. But it's sort of like a puzzle that you work out through various... You have to kind of decide, don't you? Say it's Mr. fucking cue ball head in the snooker hall with the black ball, unbelievably. What a convenience that is for Mr. Cue ball head. So you don't have that moment where you have to put it all together. The game puts it together for you. As it even states in the fucking description, it tells you you're gonna find out who the killer and the victim is. Yeah. But essentially that whole murder thing is a excuse / plot point for you to go off and kind of do some researching and trying to find out what's happening. And that's where you take control of the different characters or the patrons. Right. Now, these memories, you're not watching, you play them. So what will happen is at the very beginning, I think you select the fucking cat bloke. I can't remember his name now. The platformer, I think he's called. Yeah. And you're asked to do the barman asks you to go off and get something and bring it back. And during that adventure, you can walk around. You can like point and click. It's a 2D plane, and you kind of use the mouse to click on things to interact with them. And you use the WS and D and whatever it is to wander around. Yeah. So you interact with things, you go and do what he asks you to do. At some point during that journey of you going there and coming back, he will have a flashback of the game that he was part of, because the whole context of this game is that it's a sort of, again, it's a game within a game. It's almost as though the video game industry is real and these characters are all real, and they're almost playing a part of a game.
They're almost like they're like actors,
kind of, but they've got no.
They're the actual character,
exactly. But they're fully self-aware. That's what's happening. As in,
there's that whole fourth wall bullshit again.
Yeah, and I guess the other good thing the other thing to keep in mind is that they are aware. They're completely self-aware, but they're also aware that they're actually pretty powerless to do much about it. You know, if the game creator in the game puts them in said game and does this with the genre or this with the series, they kind of have to go along for the ride. Like they've not got much they can do. In this instance, where they're at the Six Pint Inn, they've kind of been cast aside, as it mentions. They've been like the series has ended, or they've been thrown out, or for whatever reason. So there, it's sort of
Joel's they're sick of Joel. He's done with.
Yeah,
Last of Us 3's out, and that's it. The trilogy's done.
Exactly, and he's at the bar afterwards.
Kratos is there.
Yep.
Because they're not doing any more of that. Sick of it. So that's like the idea, is it? That they've kind of like trying to relay that back to real life terms. Is you've got these characters.
Yeah.
And Daniels is there.
Yeah.
Too. Brought him back.
As he should
Cade.
be.
So everyone's
Ain't Cade, is it? It's that one begins with V. What's his name? That blue fuck. Anyway, that's who Daniels is.
The Vanguard. Yeah. So I was saying Cade's there as well.
Cade can be there, potentially. Yeah. Obviously, none of these characters have any licensing. They're all original work. So Mullins ain't still very indie in that. So it would be funny to do this game with known entities. So that would actually, thinking about a way to expand this.
Yeah.
Having, like, if PlayStation or Xbox ain't got any mascots, have they? Nintendo. Like, if they put all their mascots in one game and like created a sort of meta game like this, that'd actually be really clever. But this is essentially going for that, but with its own, its own spin. So so let's say for the platform of the fella, he's self-aware. He's wandering around. He's like, oh yeah, my series is shit. It went down the pan. Blah blah blah. And you go for a flashback, and that is essentially where you'll get to play that game he was in as that character. And you'll play a few levels or maybe a few entries into the game, and it will kind of show you the story of when they started. And you like in the platform one, you're playing a platforming game, so you're running around.
So it's like the actual genre of that game.
You play the actual genre of the game. You go and collect stuff, and then it's like, at the end it showed like the reviews, and it's like, very positive. This is a brand new, great game. And like the media reception, this is all like obviously in the flashback. So everyone's happy with it. The next game that you get to play a part of, like part 2, they start to introduce new mechanics, like you can punch things, and then it's like little bit of apprehension about the reviews and whatnot once you reach the end of that part of the game. And in the third one, I won't go into what happens, but essentially that particular story is about how that series changed, and then eventually there's like, this game's dead in the water, this franchise, so off you go. And they each of these 6 characters have their own genre, so completely different style of games, and they have their own kind of stories to how they ended up at this pisshead inn to drink away their lives because of maybe things that they did, maybe things their creators did, maybe a publisher bought the game and then bombed it. Like, there's all these sort of clever little narratives and jabs and story elements that I think is really funny and clever, just as like a whole meta kind of narrative around video games and the industry itself. I love the idea. I completely love the concept of what they did here. Unlike Pony Island, where I said I enjoyed the game itself, but the concept, the setting, not so much. This was the opposite. I was like, this is so funny to me. This is so interesting. And there's so much more they could have done in this game, and a future game could go away and do. But yeah, you get to play as the different characters and the different genres, learn about them, and then as you go on, the murder mystery becomes more of a thing. But essentially, you get 5 to 6 games and different genres, and more even. In fact, there's more than that because there's like blending and whatnot and other bits and pieces. You're gonna get to play several different bite-sized versions of games and have an interesting tale from start to finish on it.
So I'm trying to think where to start. I mean, look, in terms of the trailer, it looks like it's a step up from Dan, right? From Pony Island. Like, it looks like I wouldn't call it premium, but it looks like there's some more budget that's gone into it, if you like. It looks like there's a bit more to it.
Yeah.
So, what were your favourite parts about this game? You already referenced you like the story. But were there other things that kind of took you by surprise when you played it?
Again, it loves to fuck with you as the player. It's in the fourth wall elements there again, and that's very clever. I do like just the sort of jumping between the different genres, because there's some genres in there that I had not really played much of or at all, and I was like, I get to play like 45 minutes to an hour of this genre. I was like, actually, that's quite interesting. I might actually find a proper game, based on that. So I love that element. I love the setting. There's puzzles as well, like quite basic puzzles, but nonetheless they are there as well. But yeah, I guess it's just this nice flow of just running through the game, changing characters, learning a bit more, playing a different genre, and then it all attempting to sort of come together in this cohesive story. And I think the look of it's nice as well. Like I said, it is a step up in that sense. There are different perspectives because there's different genres. So although a lot of the game you see sort of side on walking around the pub, there are different perspectives that will come along during those flashbacks. It's quite funny as well, just in the characters, the way they talk to each other, what they say, some of the complaints they have about their creators or the developers. You're like, yeah, you've heard that from, various Reddit threads about how games have been tanked and what they did here, the design problems, where they jumped the shark, all this sort of stuff, all this narrative and this storytelling is in there as well. So
it's very tongue in cheek then.
Yeah.
I wonder if this guy's got a bit of a thing, if you like, against.
Has he got an axe to grind?
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe. Or it's just he likes to take the piss.
Yeah, or maybe he's just tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
find it interesting.
Most of the genres that you play as and the games, most of the separate sort of games are really well done as well. Like they're not just chuck away tutters, unless it's intentional. Like unless at some point a new developer perhaps took over and they bodged it, or they release an incomplete game, you get to kind of experience the buggy version of that and see it through. So there is that element as well where it does purposely sort of bomb the game. That's all part of the narrative. But generally, like you can play these games as they're intended for a little while at least, and they're pretty good, pretty entertaining. So
you actually went to the effort to make the game, which is, as you say, you kind of think, fair play to you.
Yeah.
How can he criticise that? Interesting. So, what's the main draw then? Like, is it literally just this sort of like narrative that he's created, I guess?
I think so. I don't necessarily think it's about the murder and that being a mystery. I think that takes a back seat quite quickly. It's more once you kind of suss out that you're going to get to run through these characters. One, it's seeing how they're going to implement these different genres. And then two, it is kind of how their sort of mini story comes together and how the ups and the downs of their particular character.
So you're really just acting out the game then? And I know that's a really weird thing to say because you're arguably always doing that in a game. Like it's what you're there to do. Like there's story arcs and you follow it, and there's preset cutscenes and stuff like that. So it feels like a bit of a strange thing to ask. But do you feel like you're actually playing it, or are you more just? Do you feel like an observer?
I think you feel more of an observer, but you do have input into it. So it's sort of a weird line. But because of the way it's set up and because you're constantly shifting character perspectives, not literal perspectives, although that does happen as well, it gives you that impression of you're kind of watching in on this, and then you're able to ingest what's going on. And obviously you've got more, as the player, you have more information than the individual characters do. So you can start to put things together and put links together, perhaps, or trends, or, maybe that's why those two don't get on, etc., etc., or maybe that was a misunderstanding. So it very much puts you in that observer role, and I think the shift in perspectives kind of necessitate that, because you can't really get immersed into like, I'm the platforming cat or whatever, because within an hour you're onto something else. There's no set main protagonist for you to sort of attach yourself to. You're playing out this scenario.
Lend to though, like you can't invest in anyone.
Well, because it's not really overly serious. Like the tone of the game is not. It doesn't want you to invest. It's like it's not really asking you to feel sorry for these suckers. They're all in their own way got some sort of negative trait. Usually, they're a bit of an asshole or a bit cold and whatnot. It's more about wondering and seeing how this whole picture they've painted comes together, and being able to experience the different mechanics, like I mentioned earlier. Like again, we're not asking people to feel sorry for the characters necessarily. It's more of a chuckle along than it is sitting there going, cool, scared. And it's unravelling the mystery rather than necessarily...
You're not really unravelling it, are you? You're just going through emotions.
But that's every linear story game.
Yeah.
You're put in scenarios and you play through the gameplay elements and the cutscene tells you what happens next. Like there's only a few games that say otherwise.
I think largely as well, games that... Like there's another aspect to it that's enjoyable. Like when you're playing Call of Duty, and like on single player, the end when you play from the start of the level to the end, like there's a challenge there in getting from the start to the end as part of that story, and there's a narrative around why you're doing that. You can die, like you are acting that part out, but there's a path for you to take. There's a weapon set for you to use. Like, I think the fun is doing that. So what I'm trying to get at is that also present in this game?
Yeah, each of the different genre types has, a in-game objective usually for you to complete. Some are easier than others. Some are more in depth than others.
Right.
But you have that there. It's not you don't just press left or right on the keyboard and you end up going that way. Like, you have to interact with it. You have to learn the mechanics. You have to navigate the map if it's got one. You have to. That's all present there. It's just that it's a very bite-sized version of it, rather than it being like a fully fledged. The 6 hours you're going to do doing X for the whole thing. No, you're going to be doing 6, 7, 8 different things, you'll get a bite-sized version of it. And each of those kind of levels does have some sort of commentary usually over the top of it as to what's going on with the state of the game or the franchise.
Right.
So that's where it fills in some of the story gaps, because you are just dropped into random levels.
Yeah.
But there's commentary that will come on the screen and essentially be like, this is... It even brings up, like one of the clever things it does, it brings up Steam reviews of like that very first one, that platform on the screen, and it uses like your profile name, like you came up and it said, oh, great first entry and whatnot. And again, I knew it wasn't you, but it was still just funny to see that. And then as the game descends into, going down the pan essentially after a few entries, you came up again with a negative review, and so did Dave, and so did Paper. Like it's...
Oh, so it takes off your like Steam list, does it?
Yeah, it must do. Yeah. And I was a bit like, yes. That's,
to be fair, that is quite clever. Yeah, it's an interesting little touch.
Yeah.
So, is there anything about this game that you didn't particularly resonate with?
I think there's elements in the story where it jumps the shark a little bit.
Okay.
And this might be a trait of Mullins when we've got devils playing on arcade machines.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely there's moments where I was like, you didn't need to be that, but it was, and it just felt a little bit too contrived and a little bit too over the top. As it starts to branch out further and further, I was like, it didn't need to be that complicated or that have like that extra bit of level to it. In my opinion, some people might think it was really clever, but I was like, okay, that's not the direction I perhaps would have taken it. But that's just maybe a personal preference. There are some of the games, maybe one or two, that are maybe 20 minutes too long. Like there's a bit of a pacing problem. They're not all the same length, not exactly, but there's a couple that feel longer than they need to be, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know if that's because I don't enjoy that genre of game, or whether it's because it felt long and it felt longer, or whether because it takes longer for you to navigate that part of or that genre of game. There's something to do with the pacing somewhere where I was a bit like, on a couple of them, I was like, get a move on. I want to get through this. So those are the two call-outs I think I'd make as a criticism. And they're not deal breakers.
So each of them wasn't like the same length then?
No, not exactly. There's definitely one that felt the longest, and that was the one where I was like a bit of an eye roller.
Right.
But you could probably be turned if you don't like the genre that you're being presented as well. I mean, I was fine with all of them, just FYI. But I could see someone picking this up and going, "Oh, I hate these types of games." And then you've got to kind of
Thinking
get through
paper
it.
with a platformer.
Well, anything involving skill, isn't it? It's not. It's not just platformers. Let's be frank about it. It's any skill-based game or a puzzle, anything intelligent that needs a brain to be switched on. Unless Dave's there to tell him what to do or do it for him, he's going to struggle. So it's wonder how he got through that Guild Wars. Really?
He must have found someone unknown.
Well, there must be a Reddit thread somewhere that he's subscribed to.
Yeah.
Reading up.
Okay, interesting. I mean, that's a fair point. Like, it's most of the time when you're playing a video game, like, and a lot of video games now are a mixture of genres, right? I don't think anything tends to just play in one lane. That being said, to have 6 completely different genres or whatever it is in one is a bit of a, I wouldn't say a risk, but you obviously do. In terms of giving people saying they want to enjoy and play, you're playing with fire there, because there's probably something there that they perhaps won't enjoy as much. But
again, these games come with that warning of know what you're getting into, and don't pick it up if you only play fucking Fortnite.
Yeah,
it ain't made for you. It's not there for that. It's clearly for people that have a level of investment in the industry itself, because there's a lot of commentary on that, and there's a lot of Easter eggs and little, as I said, jabs and prods and pokes at certain practices, so you'll get more out of it. And then also, if you've played through these games either from the past, because some of these genres are sort of not that prevalent these days, they're not that popular, they've been from like yesteryear. And again, if you've been around long enough and you experience them, you'll be like, oh yeah, it's a nice little flashback to go back to that. But again, it comes with that sort of same sticker warning of it is what it is, and therefore don't be expecting it to necessarily cater to you if you're quite, I don't know how to find the wording, but if you're not that experimental with your games, maybe narrow. But if you don't like experimenting and fucking about with weird things, again, this isn't the game for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So, is there anything else you want to call out on the Hex? Is it the wrong question to ask? Like, why is it called the Hex?
There is a reason. What number's Hex? 6. What is it? It's a hexagon, is it?
Well, I didn't even link it to a number my head.
I think it's the 6 pints in, the 6 patrons. The hex is a hexagon, I believe. Is that 6? 6-sided?
Otherwise, it's a pentagon, which is 5.
And you got oct, which is what's that, 8?
Octagon's 8. Yeah, must be.
There you go. That's my interpretation of it anyway. And it also, if you look on the logo, there's like 6 hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hands on a what looks like a hexagon.
Yeah, a hexagon is a polygon with 6 sides.
There you go. Well, there you go.
Right.
So I think it's as simple as that. There might be some other things in there that I didn't pick up on, or that that are there for a reason. But I think it is just that simple. But again, it's a Daniel Mullins game, so expect there to be the unexpected. Who really knows? I could be lying. I could be playing part of the geek here. I might be working everyone. I might know fully well what's going on, but just keeping it under wraps so that when people go through it, they're like, "Oh,
interesting." So, is there anything else you wanted to call out?
I don't think so. No, I think again it's just another good entry from Mullins, and different. Completely different from Pony Island.
Spoiler Island.
Good run time.
Yeah.
Sort of I spent 5.1 hours in this, so churned through it, and I think that's it really. I'll just keep.
How much you saying was up for on the store?
This one was £7.19 at full price.
progressively charging more, which is fair. There's more there.
Is it?
I mean, it's an extra £2.
Inflation, mate.
If
Can't
it's
even
that
get it
as
down
well.
to 2%. For goodness sake.
Yeah, I think overall then, not a bad little package. So
No.
by the sounds of it, we're going to a similar place that we
Yep.
went with Mullins' previous entry down to the gallery.
Yeah.
Not going to go into self-storage, I
No,
assume.
not self-storage. No.
Which means we're basically going towards gallery. So the question is, where does it go? Does it get a bump up from his previous entry? That's the question. That's what the fans want to know.
Yeah, as we stand now, this is the last self-published entry into his gaming sort of career. An expansion of Pony Island. There's certainly similar ideas and similar levels of tone of fuckery going on, which if you'll know if you like or not. But I just really loved the just the idea of it, the idea and the setting of these self-aware characters, and then being able to play through their various games and the various entries into those games and learning about an overarching story. The only thing I said lets it down is perhaps a tiny bit of pacing issues for one or two of them, and it kind of jumped the shark in certain elements and took me out of it, much like kind of Pony Island did. So could have been a gold for Mullins, but drops to a silver, still a step up from Pony Island. So it's gone from bronze to silver. He's working his way up.
Not bad. So who knows? Are you going to play the next one? What did you say it was called? The Instigator or something?
No, it's called Inscription. So whilst Hex has got his silver, the Inscription... So here's the story. I've actually started playing Inscription.
Right.
I was like, I've got to churn through one of these again. I had to stop. I weren't in the right frame of mind for that. It's very different. Right? And what I didn't realise is that it's like 12 to 13 hours. And then once I'd played like 3 or 4 hours, I was like, I'm not up for this journey yet. And I made a mistake diving straight into it off the bat. Didn't even give X a chance to breathe. I was straight on it, going, right, let's get through these before Pony Island 2 come out. And really what I should have done is done a bit more research and learned, okay, this is a longer, more of a game, more of a fully fledged game at the end of the day.
Right, okay.
It's got a lot, well, I don't know if it's got a lot more to it necessarily, but it's expecting a lot in me as a player, just as a time commitment, and I need to be aware. I should have been more aware of that, so in the end, I dropped it in. I've uninstalled it now, just so I don't go back to it.
Force his own hand.
I'll probably leave it for a while as well.
Right.
So I kind of want to go back in once I've forgotten some of the nuances.
I assume you're going to refresh. You're going to do a runny refresh on it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. It's not. I'd flushed about 4 hours, which isn't ideal, but a lot of that was just working out the game. It's like a card game essentially. So you learn the rules of that.
Yeah.
So I'll retain the basics of it, but some of the nuances I won't, which would be a good place to start. So yeah, I had to walk away from that one, which isn't a great sign. I mean, in theory, that could go in the botchling bin, but I'm doing it out of self-preservation to myself, and mainly just to be fair as well. I don't want to force myself through something that I'm clearly not up for doing.
Yeah.
I'll go off and find another short game, I think, in this period, and something completely different, because as I say, these Mullins games are just a fuckery sometimes. There's only so much fuckery I can take. Like trying to do 3 of those in the bounce, or close together within a few months, is probably not the right thing to do. Sometimes you just got to recognise that timing's not right. We'll cut our losses here and come back to it one day. And then we'll get to it and actually come in with a fresh approach and a bit more of an open mind. But yeah, that was a bit of a disaster here that happened. But you live and you learn, didn't you, at this game? So Inscription one day, but not anytime soon, is my commitment. But the Hex,
the Mullins trilogy will wait.
Well, it's longer, like I said. This game, double the Hex, if not more, and it's not published by Mullins anymore. He's made it. He's still developing it. But they've got financial backing now, so true indie game gone, true indie status gone. Devolver Digital, who do a lot of these indie-like games have got their hooks in and started messing around with it. So is it a positive or a negative? I don't know. I've heard really good things about it, but I went up for the fuckery by that point for some reason. Just got impatient and was like, let's give it a fair chance in a year or so. That might be a bit long. Back end of this year, maybe. We'll see.
Arguing with himself already.
Well, I think what I want to do is on my library. This is a real fucking blower. On my library, it says, "Oh, here's the, here are your activity for the game." Like, comes up as a little section. I want that to be gone before I go back to it. I don't want it to be lurking. I don't want to know that I played it before, even though I do.
You want to erase all.
I want to erase all memory of it.
Right.
So until that. That activity clears off, which might be a couple of weeks to a month. Like it's trading cards that I don't want that on the activity screen. So it may never happen. Might have to just drop it all together or get it on console because it is on console. This one, so
there you go.
That's the Ronnie playing up again. But the Hex silver, so he can't complain with that, can he? He's gone up in the world.
He'll take it.
Yeah, and inscription might be really good by the end of it because I'm pretty certain it ain't a card game. I'm sure that's part of it, but knowing what I know from these previous games, and there's always going to be one or two misdirections in these games, and I'm kind of looking forward to see what those are. But another day, we'll go and find something else to play.
There you go.
The Hex Silver. Played on Steam.
He can complain with that, really.
He can't really, can he? I'd like to buy that one. Trying to think how someone bought me Inscription a couple of years ago. It came out in 2021, and the Hex I didn't have. I thought it went Pony Island Inscription,
right?
And then I checked. I was like, oh no, he's done the Hex. I was like, where's that gone? And it's not even got an open critic page. The Hex, like it's really been left to the wolves. Really, it's got like a handful of reviews. Might have a Metacritic score, but.
Right.
I went back and found it. And I was like, I'm so glad I did, because that's a little gem lurking there.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just got to do the research. And again, it pays to sometimes go back to these games if they're not a big time investment to just play from the start and work your way through. Can clearly see improvement just in 2 games. So
yeah,
we'll see how it all conks out. It'd be interesting actually for Pony Island 2 whether it sticks with the original's kind of very narrow. Perspective and design choices that they made, or whether they expand it and whether it's £5 again. Will it
what
be
would
50
you prefer?
quid? I don't want 12 hours of Pony Island. I think 2.5 hours of that's enough. In the same vein that you don't want 20 hours of the Hex, you just don't want it, and that's fine. That's not even a criticism.
Yeah.
There's just certain games that are suited to being shorter experiences that perhaps you can even go back to and find the secrets if you want.
Yeah, you don't want to be
didn't need 110 hours of Final Fantasy Rebirth, for being honest, but it was there. You've straddled that line, you're asking a lot of people, so I think that's the one thing I'll say is these 2 entries, they both hit the sort of runtime almost perfectly before they outstay their welcome. That's very uncommon in
today's. Doesn't happen a lot, does it?
No, I'm waiting for the next game to have commentary on that from Mullin, saying these bloaters fucking rip them apart. Anyway, the Hex owns itself as silver. Daniel Mullins, pat on the back once again. Inscription coming whenever, not anytime soon, so don't get your hopes up for that. But nothing more for us to say other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.